says recording. Now it should say live or something. Is that what it says? Cool.
We're live.
Hey, welcome to 2-Month Review podcast, brought to you by Open Letter 3%, in which we take a book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, talk about it, laugh, do things, whatever. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books. This season, we are doing all 3 volumes of VERNON SUBUTEX by Virginie Dupont, translated by Frank Wynn. Today, we're going up to page 271, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Yes, Chad, I'm here to bring expertise, as always, and it will be in-depth and thorough.
Before we get to our special guest, I have a question for you, Brian. I want you to share the very important pressing question you had for me about your book this week.
My book this week?
Yeah, about Disney World.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, no, I've been doing some research on Las Vegas and betting lines, and like they have overs and unders. But I was wondering what would be appropriate or inappropriate, how many children you can maim before it gets a little too dark.
At Disney World.
At Disney World. How many kids at Disney World can get really badly hurt before it's not funny anymore? Or is it not funny in the first place? A satire.
I said 8, but I think the true answer is found within The Magic Kingdom by Stanley Elkin, in which 1 death negates all humor.
Okay.
Maiming, I think 7 maims, 1 death.
Katie, as a mother, how many kids can I horrifically maim in Disneyland before it's, oh, that's not in good taste?
I think you freaked her out. She's frozen.
Yeah, I think somewhere in like 7, because any more than that, and it just becomes a statistic.
Yeah, or preferably 0. Katie, did you hear that question? You froze for a second there.
No, I'm frozen, and I don't have good internet. Again, I have a problem. But no, was it about Disney World and children?
Yeah. There's going to be an accident that takes place at Disneyland, and I was wondering how many kids.
Oh yeah, no comment.
Okay.
That sounds horrible.
Okay.
No comment.
All right, sounds good.
No.
I really hate Disney, and I hate Disneyland, and so
you guys are sick. This is sick. I don't think I want to be on here.
Why am I in trouble for this? I said that The Magic Kingdom is the answer, because The Magic Kingdom is a book about a guy in Britain taking 7 dying children to Disneyland, each with their own weird sort
illness.
of disease.
Yeah, that's a
illness, like not a traditional illness, and then one of them dies in Disney World, but there's a lot of other hijinks that ensue, and the book is incredibly funny up until the tragic endings parts of it. But yeah, the book is a model.
Yeah. No. Okay. No, I've read that on your suggestion. I'll revisit it and see if maybe I should remove it completely. We'll see.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know how Elkin got away with that book. He didn't get sued. I'm surprised we just mentioning it right now. I'm not getting sued.
Well, you probably are. You just don't know.
Yeah, it takes too long for the mail to get here these days because of COVID. So yeah. Our special guest is Katie Whittemore, translator of several books. Actually, I was realizing that it was 1 week ago now that your first full-length book translation, 4x4 by Sarah Mesa, was released on May 4th of 2020. And that was followed by Aurora Moreno Duran's The Communist Daughter, which came out from Tinder in the UK this spring. And then most recently, World's Best Mother by Nouriel Labari, which came out early this month from World Edition. So 3 books, 1 year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of taking it too far, 4x4. I mean, come on, that book's messed up.
How many girls
can
get 4x4 cages before it gets too weird?
Yeah.
But there's no Disney.
That's
So, Katie, do you want to, I mean, we did the whole season on 4x4, so people probably know what that is. But do you want to give like a 1 or 2 line elevator speech for Communist Daughter and World's Best Mother?
Okay, I will. I have to apologize ahead of time. I don't have good internet service right now, so hopefully I won't freeze. But yeah, The Communist Daughter by Aurora Moreno Duran is a really lovely short novel about the daughter of Spanish communist exiles living in East Germany. So it's like, it begins with the building basically of the Berlin Wall, that time frame up through the 90s, through the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it's about this young woman's life, basically living in East Berlin, in East Germany. And she is the daughter of communist Spaniards who fled and were living in exile after Franco's victory in the Spanish Civil War. And it's beautifully done. It's very poetic. It's historical. There's a lot of ellipses and it's atmospheric. It's lovely. And Aroa is wonderful. And then World's Best Mother is like totally different animal. That's by Nordia Lobardi. And it's an exploration of motherhood, of writing, of basically of like whether the main question is like, can one be a creator? Can one be an artist as a mother? And it's sort of an exploration of that, of the dichotomy between, I guess, those types of creation, of creating life and creating a family and being able to stay an artist as well. And it's very irreverent. It's great. I mean, I love that book so much. I'm so excited about it. So World's Best Mother, I mean, I love them all, but they're all very, very different. All three books are so different and all three writers are. Yes.
I'm really curious about the World's Best Mother. Was that something that you, as an artist and creator yourself, is that something you connected with when you were going through motherhood?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My internet's so slow. I'm so sorry. But I'm just going to pick up where I think you left off.
Yeah.
Which
I heard yes.
If that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally connected with it. I mean, I wrote a little translator's note. Fuck. Shit.
Here's Katie's translator's note. Just because to give you a second to lag up there. What I loved most about translating this book was simply spending time with the narrative voice. Playful, intelligent, irreverent, dipping into humor and pathos by turns. I read this book feverishly, underlining passages, thinking of the women and men I knew who would nod along in recognition once they had the chance to read it. My happy challenge was to capture Labari's style in all its light and shadow and delve with her into the tension between motherhood and other acts of creation. And one thing that's worth noting here is you can see it on the cover a little bit, but the subtitle is it's World's Best Mother, Motherhood, Ambivalence, Writing, Ambition, Sexuality, History, Love, Abortion, Philosophy, Marriage, and Infidelity. So it's everything.
Wow, man. Hit you with the stinger at the end.
Yeah, boom! Marriage.
I just thought of that because it reminded me, a while back I'd read an essay, or it was an interview with Louis Selly, and she was commenting on how, I forget if it was while she was pregnant or after having her child, she didn't write, she didn't really want to read, she didn't even watch, she just wanted to watch a movie or something. There was no room for creation while she was creating the life. So I found that really fascinating, that it was like this Sargasso Sea. It just stopped for a while. It was so crazy. That's so productive and artistic to have that stop for a moment. It's got to be just insane.
You know what's so funny is at the time when I had my first child, I wasn't translating, but I was I've always been reading several books at once, just reading books and books and books a week. And I remember after my son was born, I stopped reading and I just watched a bunch of British mysteries on streaming. And I had a really hard time. I couldn't read. And I remember missing it. And a lot of it was because, he was sleeping with me, or I would just fall asleep. And and I remember when he was several months old thinking, I just felt bereft. I missed that time, and I missed reading, and I missed being alone in the books. And so I can only imagine what that would be like for people who are creating. But yeah, it's not easy. It's a great book. I mean, there's so much in there too for for men too, for fathers. I mean, I think that it's world's best mother, but it's motherhood, but it's parenthood, and it's being a writer as well. It's the same, those are questions that are, they're not necessarily gender specific.
Yeah. There are some very gendered specific things in here, which makes it even better. But the general is very much like broad enough to include both.
Just thinking out loud, I think that and the one that was recommended last week, Night Bitch, might be like a really cool reading. Like if you have a reading group to put those two together and talk about this, that sounds like it'd be really cool.
Yeah, so World Editions, go buy it. Start a reading group. There is what is that? There's the next thing I was going to ask you though, Katie, is your next book that's coming out, which I'm going to use as a segue. But why don't you tell us what it is first, and then we'll launch into the next part.
I feel like you should talk, because am I frozen the whole time? Because you're frozen half the time. I don't even know what is coming through.
Do you want to tell us about last?
Is it terrible?
You're Serena. You're coming through fine.
Okay. Oh, I am? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. All right. So I'm like, if you just catch me like staring like a dum-dum, it's because everyone else is frozen. I have terrible service right now. So Last Words on Earth by Javier Serena. Javier Serena is a young Spanish writer. He's from Pamplona. And he is actually the coordinator of Spain's 10 of 30 project that they're doing for the lead up to Frankfurt. So that's how I got to know him and start to read him. And Javier is like a total romantic with a capital R. He's like an old soul writer. Like he's tortured by craft and his art. And, how do you stay like a legitimate artist when you have to like earn a salary doing something else and all of that. And so those are some of his main, concerns and preoccupations. So Last Words on Earth is like a fictionalized account of a writer who appears very much like Roberto Bolaño. And so basically Javier like took Bolaño, like the figure, Bolaño the myth, Bolaño the hero, and crafted this really gorgeous book, this meditation on failure and fame, and basically like the unwavering commitment to one's art. And he sort of like immortalizes all of this in this figure of Ricardo Funes, who is Peruvian, but he took Bolaño, like I said, like the figure, and created this character, Ricardo Funes, and basically picks up from like the days when Bolaño, Funes were like living in the Costa Brava, and before he achieved the renown and the success, and then basically it takes us up through sort of like that incredible explosion of interest in his work and fame, and then his untimely death. And so, but it's a short novel, and it's really, really beautiful. It is definitely the only book that I've read in the last couple of years, and definitely the only book that I've translated where I was moved. Like I've been moved to tears translating it, if I can be honest and cheesy. Like, not crying hard, but my eyes did well up at certain parts when I was translating. So it's really, really moving. And anybody who loves books, who loves literature, who believes in that romantic with a capital R power of literature, and the commitment to creating, it's like, it will strike a nerve for sure. I love it.
Absolutely. The part that you gave us, the sample that led us to signing it on, had me literally cry, and even editing it, like literally cried there and at another point. So I'll back that statement without being even like the writer or translator of it. So that book comes out in September, which happens to sort of coincide with when this season of the 2-month review will be over and we'll be ready to start another season. So for that reason, and because I want to make sure that Brian never has any influence whatsoever on the books that we cover on this podcast, we decided to allow you, Katie, to choose which Bolaño book we should do as the next season of the 2-month review. And what did you choose? Sorry, Brian, you have you'll never get a choice.
I chose 2666 by Roberto Bolaño.
Multi-volume version here.
All right.
Ooh, fancy.
Another 3-volume. It's actually 5 volumes, but another 3-book book. So we'll go from one trilogy to another sort of quasi-trilogy.
Great.
Another one of those books that looks awesome on people's shelves, but nobody reads it.
This one I think a lot of people read because it's actually not. I mean, it's big and ambitious, but in terms of like the line by line nature of Bolaño, he's never super like, you're not lost as much as like you are with like Gaddis or some of the other people that we read.
No.
You're not lost like ever, really.
No, it's so good.
And Katie, you agreed to be essentially like a rotating host for this. So
yeah, Brian contacted me. Brian contacted me and told me that he was tired of working with you. He was tired of doing this week after week. And would I mind, stepping in and kind of like just shouldering a bit of the burden of having to do this all the time with you?
What's funny is that what he told me was he sent me a message saying, "Go fuck yourself. Katie and I are doing the next season. We don't want you." I said, "Oh."
Yeah, that's the other surprise. Actually, it's me and somebody else, and you guys don't even know who it's going to be. But I've double crossed you both.
It'll be Bolaño's spirit.
It's me, and we're going to hold a séance, and I'll be speaking with Bolaño in spirit. Yes.
At least it'd be awesome is have someone dress up like Bolaño and just come on as a guest one week and challenge him. We haven't done goofy shit in a while. So. Anyways, one other thing. I know this is a long intro, but the section is really short this week and really only covers 3 different character beats, one of which is really dark and sets the stage for why I think can help set the stage for what makes the continuation of this trilogy very interesting to me, and to re-energize it. We'll get to that in a second. Anyways, Katie, before we go on past that, where are you and what are you doing right now?
You're frozen. I'm assuming you're finished speaking. I'm going to start to talk. I'm in the Spanish countryside. I'm about 30 minutes outside of Valencia right now, and in a little country cottage with country internet. So I apologize. I hope that this is not terrible because the experience for me is not that great.
Heard that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm outside of a little village called Casinos in the province of Valencia, in a little cottage that I've recently purchased, and doing a bunch of work on it, and in hopes of creating a little space for a translation and Spanish writers retreat. So that hopefully will be coming to fruition next year, or as we can start to travel again. But the intention is to create a space where translators and writers can come, and in the beginning, I think it'll be a place that people could rent to come and work in a really beautiful and serene environment. Close to Valencia. Like I said, it's just 30 minutes from Valencia and 30 minutes from the Mediterranean. And it's sort of like in the foothills of some beautiful mountain range as well. And so hopefully people will be able to come rent for like a really decent price if you're a translator or a writer. And then eventually the goal is to help subsidize those stays as well, and have an application process where people could come and have at least a couple translators a year fully funded. So that's the vision, and hopefully, as we can start to travel again and things get a little bit more normal, that will be coming to fruition next year.
So absolutely. So if people that are listening are writers, translators, or the like, and are looking to rent a place in Valencia or outside of Valencia, which is gorgeous and is amazing. Valencia is amazing, and the pictures of this place are incredible. And it'll be a very cute cottage or cabin, or not cabin, cottage or house, whatever you want to refer to it as. They can, I guess, contact us, and we'll send it on to you. Okay, Katie.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested, yeah, definitely. I can put my email somewhere.
Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, we can put your email in the show notes. But it's
yeah. If people are interested, yes, let's start talking. It's off grid. It's off grid. It's solar panel powered, and there's a couple of acres of almond orchards, and there's a little pool, and it's about 5 minutes drive outside of this village, which is very, very famous for its sugared almond production, which are called paladillas in Spanish, and turrones. So so it's a cool little place, but it's really close. It's, like I said, it's a half an hour from the Manises Valencia International Airport, and it's rustic, but it's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'd love to welcome people here soon.
There we go. So pitch for that, pitch for last words, pitch for World's Best Mother. Let's turn to Vernon, SUBUTEX. Katie, how did you come across Virginie Despentes?
Through you, Chad, actually. Yes, I think that you recommended Vernon SUBUTEX, Volume 1, and I read that last year. And then you sent me King Kong Theory, which I'm reading. And actually, I'm much more familiar with Virginie Despentes and King Kong Theory than I am with her novels, because she has been cited in several works by young Spanish female writers that I've read recently as sort of like an important figure in their own literary and feminist formation. So I like, at least in the last month, I've read 2 different books that figure where she figures in there as sort of like a reference. So that's kind of neat.
So I know that you're kind of busy, rehabbing a house and translating 19 books, but have you read any of King Kong Theory, and do you have any first impressions?
I've read probably the first third, and I think it's really interesting. Like I think where I stopped was when she is describing the sexual assault that she and her friend experience when they take that ride with the 3 guys, and I'm finding that really interesting because she talks about like not knowing what to name that experience, like not like having it just like not occur to her initially to call that a rape. And I think that that's so important and critical. And I think that's a really, really common issue for people who experience assault, is to know what to call it and when, and to know if if you survive it and you didn't like fight someone with a knife, can you claim that word, I guess. And
yeah.
I find that explanation like really, really powerful. She's got a lot of really interesting ideas, on sex and violence, and that will enter into what we read for this week as well. The idea of violence, of masculine violence, and her treatment of it is pretty interesting. And when we talk about Patrice, I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Do we want to just start with Patrice? I mean, the 3 sections this week are not connected. I mean, with the exception that Patrice, that Vernon is staying with Patrice, and then in Sophie's section, he's not. He's on the bench in the park or whatever when Sophie, Xavier's mom, finds him and tries to give him money. But the three are kind of independent of one another in a lot of ways, so we can just go wherever we want. So why don't we start talking about Patrice? Because Patrice is the one that I named the podcast title after, of Marxist Hell's Angel, because it jumped out as like part of his self-descriptive terminology, which is like, seems like both kind of a contradiction of terms, but then even more so becomes a contradiction as you read his section, because the idea of being like Marxist and leftist in that sense, like leftist in a social or in a socioeconomical sense, is one thing, but he's a fucking evil person. Like in his actions, existentially, like the abuse that he doles out to his wife and to his children, like straight up physical and emotional and horrible abuse is not acceptable in any way. So like all of his like quasi good points are very overshadowed in this case by his horrific actions as a aggressively, I don't know, over the top, macho, super tatted up dude.
Yeah, I feel like she does. Again, I think she employed that great trick she does, where he's a terrible person, but he's still a rendered human being. He understands what he's doing is bad, but he has his reasons why he does it, and it's not justifiable. But it's still like he's just not bad to be bad. He's a complicated human being. Like especially when he's in those therapy sessions, and how much he hates the therapy sessions. He's like, do you think I want to be like this? Do you think if I wasn't like poor and working hard and being shit on by the world, I wouldn't be angry and I wouldn't lash out and I wouldn't have violence? Do you think if I was white collar and rich and had a nanny and had maybe it's like the Marxist side of it, but he makes it socioeconomic strata which is causing the problem, not necessarily him. So I thought it was really interesting. It's that same trick though, where everybody is like fundamentally flawed in some way, but also beautiful in another kind of way.
Yeah,
his is really hard to see any beauty in him because he's just so vile. As far it's like domestic abuse is really hard to find anything nice about a person that's going to beat a pregnant, partner. Like it's tough. But I still like that she shows that he's a human being. He's not just hey, look at this dark underside of Paris.
He's not solely the testosterone.
Yeah.
He's also here's one of the lines about him. When he was young, he got a master's in English. He'd enjoyed college, the classes, the cafeteria, the student union, the parties, the exams. All sounds nice and normal. And then you get to like his other actions and they're horrible. And then right across the page, he's talking about what you were saying, Brian, about like the fact that people are like, oh no, if you just like took it easy and didn't get angry and walked away, it would be okay. And he's like, if he was rich, he's like, I'd think about all the contracts I was negotiating. I would have less time to think about cutting the throats of rich fuckers who only get to live well because they've taken everything from me and mine, taken everything. And that level of very much, not what we think of as the normal like masters of English student who's like likes exams in the student union. Like, but people aren't simple. I had a crazy experience. I'm going to just insert this here. So I've been reading this. I have to read these books for this Korean literature contest, like through the KLTI or LTI Korea. And the one that I'm reading most recently, I'm almost done with, is called 7 Years of Darkness. And it's like a psychological thriller. This young girl gets killed in this tragic way and like involves these three men who basically like end up being all fucked up for all sorts of reasons. But anyways, the main setup, the way that the book works is it's got 4 or 5 different characters and it goes through each of their different viewpoints with overlapping narration. So you don't always go from one, like where one section ends, the next section might begin before that or like in the middle of that and go forward from that person's point of view, which is very similar to what happens in VERNON SUBUTEX. So we have this sort of like Venn diagram or mosaic of like overlapping perspectives on the plot, so to speak. So the plot being Vernon doesn't have a home. Vernon had the tapes from Alex Bleach. And that's all you really need. That's all you really know right now. Everything else is just stage setting. But one of the things that tripped me out was last night I was reading this book, and there's one of the characters abuses his wife and his daughter like severely, and they run away. It's the same setup as this. And I got the two books totally mixed up. Like I was so confused as to who is who. Was I'm like all this like character driven like ideas. I was like, aren't you the wife abuser? And then be like, oh no, this guy doesn't like fights. And I was like, the fuck is this? I couldn't keep anyone's history straight because there are just too many like characters in my mind. But I really like this was a long segue to say one very specific point, is that's the thing that I've realized I really like about her book. It isn't her narration. It isn't even that they're multifaceted, which I do think is very important and is key to this, but it's that sort of overarching style of like this overlapping, intersecting viewpoints. I like that quite a bit, like rather than like there being anyone guiding it, and it doesn't feel totally guided. It feels much more like you're just turning on someone else's eyes into a situation, and they're doing this part of it, and then someone else is this other angle to it. And I think that that's really compelling to me. And I don't know, I can't think of a lot of books that employ this. I know there are, but right now these two are the two that I'm like, yes, I really like this style at this moment in time. That's my point. What do you think of Patrice, Katie?
Well, I was just reading, there's like one section that I underlined when he's talking about how he hated to see her cry, to see her body crumple, becoming the opposite of what she was, a happy, lighthearted, vibrant woman, exactly the type of girl he went for. He had watched, devastated, as she transformed into his girlfriend. I thought that was like so well put and powerful. Like she was this person, and she became his girlfriend, and he watched that with devastation. I thought that was really, really, really well done, and it was the beautiful translation. Drain of life, around her eyes, bitter lines tugging at the corners of her mouth. It was almost as if destroying them was part of the pleasure. It's like, that's pretty intense. But I love that about, he watched as she, being with him, being his girlfriend, transformed her in this horrible way. And he's like, it's like he's watching it happen outside of himself, with, obviously some sort of like a morbid pleasure of it.
Yeah, that sort of pops up too. And she comes back. That sort of pops up in the sense of like the way that he describes the process of beating women is like this the unnerving way in which. No worries. I was just saying that there's that, and in addition to that part, like that reminds me a bit of the unnerving way in which he describes the process of how he starts beating his girlfriends and partners, and like they're like, oh well, they need to know, they need to be. Where's the line? It's like obviously it hurts him more than it hurts her. For a slap, the girl doesn't realize yet that it started. Even when they've been in a dozen relationships where they've been abused a dozen times, girls refuse to admit they know how it works. They need to believe it's an accident. Love will prevail over brutality and turn their boyfriend into an attentive partner. And then later on, oh God, where is it now? But there's something where he talks about like in the moment, all you want is that rush of power, to look into the woman's eyes and see respect, fear. And if the girl isn't completely terrified, you go on punching. Only when she demonstrates that she is utterly submissive does the violence end. The essential is to instill terror, to make the woman submit. Like that's fucking dark. That's super fucking horrible. Dark and horrible, and just like really unnerving to know that that's not uncommon. Like I saw something yesterday. Where was it? It was something that like 163 million times over the pandemic, like how to beat my wife without marks showing up was Googled.
What?
Yeah, it was like an ad for domestic abuse hotline sort of thing. And over the course of the past year, that is a common search term, which is not okay. Like just straight not okay. Which brings me to my question that will bring in what you were talking about before we got started, Brian, is that can Patrice be redeemed, or is he irredeemable? We have a comment here saying Kiko's a piece of shit, but Patrice deserves every bad thing the universe could possibly throw at him. which I believe is also true.
Yeah.
But then is there, so one of the, so do you think he could be redeemed as a character?
Gosh, I don't know. It'd be a hell of a literary trick. I wouldn't be able to. I don't know. That's a hell of a lot. That's a huge empathy exercise to find a way to make that person like tender or vulnerable enough where you'd want them to be redeemed. After how, there's like on page like around 242, 243, how dark and sinister it is.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just deep and dark and bad.
Do you have to? I don't know if I mean that you have to feel sympathy for him though, or empathize with him, not necessarily his character, so much as like existential redemption.
I think just to write it, for her to write this character, if she wanted to make him, if he ends up being redeemable at some point, you'd have to get in his skin and like live like that for a little bit to find why is he so evil? What made him this way? What has he been through that's putting him into this place and to treat people that way? I mean, somebody had to love him at some point. Somebody right? He's somebody's kid. He's some like.
Isn't this section? This is where I'm fucking this up and confusing these with the two books. But is it his parents who his mom beats him, abuses him, or is that in the other book that I'm reading?
I don't recall that.
Okay. So again, this is where I'm sorry. This is reading two things that have like a similar sort of like approach and like characters that overlap in terms of their general abuse towards the world is a little tricky for my brain.
But like Vernon knows this bit about him because he admits there's that wonderful, I really like the conversation they have where Vernon's very open with him.
Yeah.
Talking about the woman he's in love with and how it rubs Patrice the wrong way. It's on page 253. It's a really great dialogue. I always fall in love with women who only find me entertaining for 5 minutes. So this Brazilian, she ditched you? She wasn't as free as I had thought, just my type, already in a relationship with a guy who's filthy rich. She didn't need to think too hard to work out which way her heart was leading her. You still raw? Yeah. Not a tranny, was she? Yes, she's transgender. Really beautiful, really classy. You're joking. No, you asked, I'm telling you. Yeah, but I was just talking shit. You said Brazilian, so I said a tranny, but it was only a joke. It wasn't a real question. I got the wrong end of the stick. Her dick was bigger than mine. At first, I was pretty surprised. That didn't bother me. You're not going to believe this, but I came to the conclusion, and believe me, I was shocked as anyone, but I had to face facts. We don't really care about pussy. We don't care. There's more to a girl than her pussy, unless you want to have kids. I'm talking passion here, not preschool. And then Patrice goes on about like, the thing that really makes him mad is that he's okay talking about this. Like, no, you're supposed to hide this. You're not supposed to share these feelings. Like later when he talks on about, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever been with.
That's the part that I had marked.
Oh, it's the next page.
Yeah.
He gets really like tender and open, talking about how beautiful and feminine she is. And then later he starts talking about, well, I beat women. And like somehow they're both like uncomfortable with each other, but they're okay with their living arrangement for some reason. It's this really weird relationship they have.
Well, I mean, but I see that like Vernon being open with him is like this. And I think that this is where potentially there is the possibility for redemption, is that it's like there's a little like, you know, chink in the fence there where he's able to see the possibility of being honest and of and he says here, it's like he says there's something really ballsy about allowing yourself to be seen naked. And so it's like a very intimate moment where they both express something that what you would normally like keep secret, and he's unsettled by what Vernon says, but not so much that Vernon's been with someone with a transsexual woman, but by the fact that Vernon is like just talking about it and like waxing poetic about her beauty. And then he says, you know, that Cecile left him and took the kids. I used to beat her. And this was something else I underlined that I think is so important. So this is on 255. He says, so Vernon says, you beat your wife. Was she cheating on you? And Patrice, you don't batter the mother of your kids because she did something wrong. You do it because you're violent. And it's like, so there is a recognition there. And there is like this moment of intimacy and of like sharing, where I think like what wasn't happening for Patrice in like his, you know, mandated anger management therapy, you know, he like scoffs at all that. Like what's happening between him and Vernon right now is like a softening of that wall and the potential for expressing himself and talking about what he does, not what he did, but like who he is, and who he knows who he is. Well, he knows who he is, and he's not blaming Cecile. He knows that there's something wrong with him, and I think it is really interesting. It's to complicate him, like it's not just to make him a monster, but it's, you know, you don't want to have any sympathy for this person. But then when right here on 256, when he says, you know, Vernon's listening to him attentively. Okay. So it's like, and they're like cooking together, and they're in, like, you can imagine, like they're in the kitchen, and it's like, you know, it's warm, and he's slicing potatoes, and they're talking about like these really intimate things. And Vernon says, you're too sensitive. Violent men are always so sensitive. Spoken like a woman. We'd never realized we'd fuck up this badly, did we? If we had known, what difference would it have made? And I think that's, again, like here, you know, this is, I don't know, it's sort of like introducing this idea as well, I think, of age, which I think is really important in this book too. Like there's so much reference to them being middle-aged and what is happening at that time in these like aging rockers, like these cool guys, like these, you know, where are they now? And how do they have to face themselves, you know?
Yeah, this is like the self-referential moment for people watching this, but this whole section reminded me a bit of the Los Campesinos song and or album, We Are Beautiful, We Are Doomed, in the sense that that's what these people sort of were, was they were beautiful and they were doomed, and they're all falling apart. So Brian, when you were talking about the sort of propulsion of the book sort of waning towards the later sections, the thing that I think, I don't know that I want to give away anything that happens after this, but the thing that I want to point out is that we have had a lot of single character moments. Like we don't have a lot of these characters reappear. Xavier reappears through the lens of his mom. Vernon reappears a couple times. People are referenced, like Lydia Bazooka's referenced by other people, and so is Sylvia, who he steals the shit from. But nobody has a second part yet. So in some ways, this whole first book is the first act of giving you where everyone's starting point is on their character arc.
Okay.
So we get the starting character arc for Patrice here, and that's why I ask if he can be redeemable, because by the end of the third volume, where Patrice is might be totally different.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't remember like that part of it. So don't. I know the general thread, and I know where things go, and I know what happens next and where like the two MacGuffins collide. But like I don't remember everyone's specific thing because there's like a billion names. There's like a billion. Yeah. Patrice, Xavier, I could confuse them both. I read these over like a 3-year period. It's not super clear in my mind, but I do know that every person sort of evolves throughout the 3 parts of the trilogy, and that this first part really is that stage setting of like of here's where everyone is, here's who they were, here's where they failed. Like nobody's life turned out the way they wanted it to.
Yeah, that's like what I really admire most so far, I think, with this book, is that each character I find very fascinating and interesting.
Yeah.
Like nobody's a piece of furniture or something that just kind of decorates the room. Like everybody has their moment to shine. Yeah. Whether they're good or bad, I think they're all very fascinating and really well rendered, and it's really impressive and memorable.
I agree. So let's jump back out of Patrice. I mean, one other part of Patrice's section that is really effective, though, or affecting, is the childbirth section.
Yeah, all the descriptors.
I'll leave that to you, Katie, to address, because I'm...
Leave it to me. Well, but I've never witnessed childbirth.
True.
I've been in it. So maybe either one of you wants to speak to this instead.
Yeah. Well, the general section is that he's like, this is crazy. Like the fact that women like give birth, there's like blood everywhere. She shits herself. There's like, it's painful. It's horrid. Everything is just like visceral and intense. And he's like, what the shit? And then like, he's like, well, women forget this immediately and men don't, because like some months later, she's like, we should have another kid. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you not remember what you just did as a body?
Yeah.
Like, and that is pretty remarkable. I mean, women birthing is a remarkable thing. That doesn't even need to be said, but it has to be said. But like, yeah, I kind of get that, but like, I don't know. It's, yeah. You, Brian?
I love this, like, this line I loved. So on 230, when he says, you know, he's describing her, it's just like, it's so unglamorous, you know, nothing. So down like towards the end of the last paragraph, nothing but his wife, who could no longer hear him. She was streaming with sweat, her feet, which had swollen up like bruised balloons 3 days earlier, hanging in the stirrups. She no longer had the strength to push. She had been through too much pain. She had already shat herself copiously, and this was just the beginning. Her labor lasted 5 hours. The medical team decided it had gone well.
Yeah. The medical team has decided what is going on is the best line.
And it's just like, and they're like that. I mean, that's it. Like, it's a successful labor and delivery, and it's horror, you know. And it's like, oh, everything's gone great, you know. Yeah, I love that. I think this is something really,
and the blood, or the fact that when it comes out, the kid is a howling monster. It was seeing her suffer. Everything was fine. He was happy to show up to cut the cord.
Yeah, this is like, and this is like to visualize. I still haven't watched the Topic series. I'm gonna wait till we finish this and see like how far they got with their 7 episodes or whatever. But Patrice is like a giant, super tatted up, you know, masculine Hell's Angels bass playing dude. And that is the other thing I want to mention, is that he plays with Alex. And there's that great toss away bit where they're like, oh, we're gonna get the band back together. And Alex is like, and everyone's like terrible at playing music now because they're old and shitty, and they're like dumping on Alex, and nobody's good, and it's not going to work out, and he lets it all go. And I really like that too. That sort of like, oh no, man, we could totally be rockers. There's like that Kids in the Hall sketch where they're like, oh man, we're going to make it. We're totally going to make it with our band. And they're like dead. And God's like, no, you don't make it. You're dead. You're never gonna make it as a band.
yeah. I'm looking for that.
But we can jump back to Aïcha and Hyena, who was everyone's favorite characters last week. Who were everyone's favorite characters last week? And they're in Barcelona. Aïcha is becoming friendly with the hyena, which is great. The hyena saves her for a purse from being stolen when someone walks by and swipes it, decks him. But the most important part of that scene seems to be when Aïcha when the second person that comes up to rob or to like protect their friend just fucking decks him.
Yeah.
They bond over violence to criminals.
Their violence is totally acceptable.
No, I know.
Their violence is their beating of these people of like taking down is 100% acceptable, and that is one of the things that I think I don't know the right way to put this without making it sound without sounding wrong, but basically like the relationship to violence throughout Virginie Despentes' writings, both in King Kong Theory and in this, is sort of complicated because violence isn't always bad. Mm-hmm. Like even in the essay that you're talking about, Katie, where she's like, I had a knife. Like I could have cut these people. Yeah. And I didn't think about it. I didn't even for a second think that I should defend myself. And like, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and there's parts of this book that are like, you know, if you're going to go out into the world, like Kathy Acker was talking about Camille Paglia's in an interview with Kathy Acker, she's talking about Camille Paglia talking about where like, if you're a woman and you go out into the world, that is a risk. You can't pretend that it's not going to be a risk. You can't pretend that you can't change, that you're going to change society so that no men will try and rape you, that is a possibility, and you need to be ready to fuck that person up if need be. And that part versus then the Patrice part where it's like, whoa, no, this is not okay violence, is really, I mean, it's a great juxtaposition, and like you always agree with her, and at the same time, like if you try and pull out some grander moral standards about violence as a whole, it becomes a little bit more nuanced than what typically gets like promoted as a slogan.
Yeah, and I see too, like with all of these characters, like she always kind of sets up, it's almost like the start of a joke where you can see the cliches a mile away, but it's almost immediately subverted.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like with like Aïcha and the hyena, like these guys are come to steal stuff from them, and they just immediately just kick their ass swiftly. Like, you would not expect that, right? It flips it. Or the conversation, like the conversations that we showed between Patrice and Vernon, where it's like, oh, she's Brazilian, she must have been a transvestite. Yes, actually she was. And what's the difference is that she's amazing. Or like, oh, you your wife, were you drunk? Did she cheat on you? Like, no, I was sober. Yeah. I'm just angry.
No, I'm just a violent.
Yeah, I'm a violent person. And that's what violent people do. So she like sets up the cliche scenario and then flips it on. It's like she continually flips it, and which I think makes it very interesting and engaging.
That's also true with Aïcha, where Aïcha is like, where her relationship to Islam is already more complex than the most representations that you get of that through like a traditional TV show or like sitcom or whatever. Like that she's like, no, I found something that I believe in. And like her part of it is like, it's so genuine and so like self-affirming that it doesn't feel like either the sort of militant Islamic nature that her father sort of portrays her as, or like the sort of stereotypical of like being sort of cloistered and like not aware of the world. Like she's super pissed at her mom, obviously, at Vodka Satana, who's the other, is like maybe the third sort of like red herring here, or not really red herring, but like one of the threads to pay attention to. Yeah. But she and she's like, this is despicable. Like, how could you do this? It's horrible, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like, she's like, she feels very confident as a character and as a woman and as a teenager in a way that's like very respectful and doesn't and betrays that stereotype of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always like creating moral conflicts within wherever you are or whoever you are as a reader. Because, you know, for instance, like, I want to murder my mom, but it's honoring my father. Like,
yeah.
One of those kind of lines where Hyena's like, what the, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm on the train with you?
That is my favorite part. Like, this isn't, I don't know if this would be my line of the week, but it's close. But one of my favorite parts is where Hyena is like, no, you wouldn't. You would love your mom. Everyone loved your mom.
Yeah. Like, no,
like,
awesome.
And Aisha's like, well, fuck that. And then she's like, but it's kind of nice to hear that, that this woman's like undeniably like, no, your mom was awesome. And like that's pretty cool too. Mm-hmm. Who's your favorite character so far, Katie?
I'm sorry, that cut out. Can you ask me again?
Oh, who's your favorite character so far?
I can't hear you. I'm so sorry.
Brian, do you have a favorite character?
In this
it's
section,
horrible. It's just like all fuzzy.
In this section, I loved the like quote unquote crazy lady that's showing Vernon the ropes on how to be homeless in France.
That's not in this section. That's not in this section.
Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding. I got ahead of myself.
Rewind.
There's no awesome homeless lady that's going to show him the ropes and how the world works.
God damn it, Brian Wood.
I don't. We'll dig Hyena. She's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Hyena is a lot of fun.
But all the characters are great. Obviously. Like, honestly, maybe one of the lamest characters so far is maybe Vernon.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah.
But he's kind of like he's the frame that the painting that draws your eye into the painting, maybe.
Yeah, the fact that like, I mean, you could talk for a minute. Well, she gets back on here, especially of like, why is the book named after him?
Well, it's kind of like when you have one of those ensemble cast productions where there's like one central character, Like it's not Alex Bleach necessarily, but like it's like the one that sets everything in motion and kind of thread everything together is him. Like his record store at that time, and then that crumbling, and like what it does to him, and then
his homelessness is the red herring MacGuffin, not red herring MacGuffin.
And so, like to me, he's like the perfect vehicle to travel with and meet all these people.
Interesting, because you would also expect that if it were named after Vernon Subutex, that Vernon would be the hero.
Yeah.
And but then again, what is his hero's journey?
Well, this isn't one of those nice, neat Writer's Digest 8 points of plot kind of books, right?
Although it is a trilogy, so he is starting out in a slow despond, essentially, of like he had his normal life, and then he's hit rough patches.
Yeah.
So like then the hero's journey would be to overcome that through his quest, going out, being homeless, questing through Paris to figure out how to be homeless and how to survive, and then achieving something great at the end.
So he's going to have to meet the goddess, who's going to have to give him something that then will have to sacrifice greatly. Can't wait.
Sorry, guys.
You're fine. Don't apologize. You're all good. Did you have a favorite character so far?
I think that.
Oh, and we didn't talk about Sophie.
Yeah, I think Sophie might be one of my favorite characters, actually. I'm going to go ahead to Sophie's part. This part is like so painful. It was hard to read. And I thought, again, like really well done. I mean, I guess I kind of want to start with something at the end of her section and we can go back. But, you know, when she's trying to, like I could just see it so clearly, like when she's trying to give Vernon the money and she's looking at Vernon and she's just seeing the past. And, you know, she goes to go get the money and she comes back and he's gone. And it's just like, I just am picturing this woman standing in the park, like having taken out her last €100 for the month. And she's just like standing there alone in the park and he's disappeared. But I think that I think this chapter is great because it really complicates Xavier's character as well. You know, to have this perspective of his mother and to know about, you know, the loss of the brother. But anyway, but as a mother, when I read this part when she says that after he dies, like all she does is just see the little boy. That's all that she remembers, really. Yeah. And that she, every time, you know, she sees the children playing. I don't know. I thought it was beautifully done and really intense.
Yeah. Yeah. The distance between her and her daughter-in-law and grandchild is like heart-wrenching to me.
Yeah.
Like, it feels very like, it feels very precise in a way that like, I don't know. It feels really true. It has a ring of authenticity to it in the writing that is also very hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one, like growing up in the 90s and grunge and all the cliches about heroin use within the, you know, the rock community that was going on then. And like, almost like this hits so hard and puts a face to it and gives it so much humanity. It was rough and hard. And I really liked that. Again, it's like that idea of, oh, this isn't that cliche of like heroin overdose. Like this is what's left over. This is hard. Like I like that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah.
Like this is the part that I was referring to. So on 263, they buried Nicholas and the sickly young man faded from his mother's memory. She remembered the little boy, so belligerent that she was known to every head teacher in every school where he was enrolled. He loved Candlemas crepes, the old westerns he watched with his father, climbing on top of the wardrobe in his bedroom and pretending to be Goldorak. He collected Rahan comics and loved to make spaceships out of cardboard boxes. It's like, ow.
Yeah. 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 Yep.
Yeah.
Oof. All us parents do not.
So how many? But what if this was at Disneyland?
If it was at Disneyland,
Is it okay? Have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay.
Bring your children in. Good Lord.
Yeah, this is tell someone you love them.
I know both of you, and I know that Brian, you don't like Disneyland whatsoever, or Disney World, or the Disney Corporation, aside from anything they provide for your daughter to watch unabated for hours and hours and hours, while you can get other work done because Hulk is smashing and or Thor is being Thor. Katie, on the meanwhile, other hand, 180 degrees, loves Disney World.
I've never been. Maybe
And I'm not afraid to admit it.
She's not afraid to admit it.
I'm not afraid to admit it.
Pure love of Disney World.
It is the most magical place on earth.
I believe I told you that I did LSD in Disney World once, and you told me that was sacrilegious.
Yeah, that's not right.
You added fun.
So but I will explain. I mean,
also, if anyone from the University of Rochester is watching, I never did acid. I'm clean. Go.
Yeah. I think they know.
I look normal.
You look, yeah, you're totally respectable.
Really looking normal.
No, I have a very, very like strong nostalgic connection. And it was because we went, we would go, I don't know, like every 2 years or something when I was little. And like, I just have like really, really strong memories connected to like being happy there, literally being happy, truly being happy, like with my parents. And I have this memory. It's like one of my most treasured memories of my whole life, which was, I was maybe I was like 11, and we like went with with my aunts and uncles and cousins. It was like a big trip. And my father was in the military, and we stayed there's like a military resort called Shades of Green, and it's like a discount Disney resort and like golf course for military families. And that's where we stayed. And I remember it was in the early days. I mean, this is so off topic. I shouldn't even be going on and on. But basically, my dad like woke me up early one morning, and we were like able to get into the park early access, like an hour before everybody else. That's when this was new. And now that's like the standard norm. And my dad and I went alone, and they opened up like Main Street USA, and like we like held hands, and we're like running down Main Street USA, and it was like me and my dad in this moment. So yeah, I have like a real nostalgic thing, but it's also sort of like a painful, like it was like happy memories that were also like sad dad, painful memories. But yeah, I don't have any. I don't love the Disney Corporation, but I don't have any problem with Disney World.
I don't have any problem with Disney World. I'm like neutral in this. I'm in between you two. I actually enjoyed the times I've been there. The only thing that I have to say about it that's negative is that I will not go there again, because the reason that I probably won't go there again for a while is that the main way I went was through my ex-mother-in-law lives right there. So I used to go stay with her and then go to Disney with Chloe and with Aiden. And that's really not going to happen anytime soon. And also, like, my dad used to work with this woman who's a VP, and she would get us in for free. So as a summer trip when I was in between junior and senior years in college, we went down there as a group of weirdo co-op living boys, and went to Disney World for the day, and it was fucking wonderful because we got in for free through like this woman my dad knew, but he doesn't know her anymore. So I have no Disney World memories forthcoming, but I don't have I have a very neutral relationship to Disney, is like enjoying those experiences, but not having them necessarily as a parent anymore, which I think is an important key to it, because I think that part of Disney's power is in nostalgia. And nostalgia is something I have a really complicated relationship with, a very complicated relationship to it, especially when it comes to generations and nostalgia across generations. Now we're way off topic, Katie.
I just want to make it clear that I'm not one of those people who has like the car window decals of like the little family, like all the different members of the family with mouse ears. I'm not. It's,
Actually, what
my
Katie won't
interest in
admit
Disney does not extend so far.
What Katie won't admit is that on her back and her upper right shoulder is a Mickey Mouse tattoo. And I hope she can't hear me.
Just in the. Yeah. We're at an hour. That's enough.
Do you have a favorite line? Anything you want to say?
No, we've read a lot. I'm fascinated with Disney, and the reason I want all that stuff to happen there is because, again, it's nostalgia, it's happiness, and all these memories, and it's all built on blood and death and torture and capitalism and anti-Semitism. And I think it's amazing that this Magic Kingdom is built on all of that. It's a wonderful, sad but a wonderful image. I find that so fascinating, and that's why I want to explore that a little bit.
I do want to thank Disney for Winter Soldier and WandaVision and I don't know what else, but that's cool. You missed a big part, Katie. You'll have to listen to this again to see what went on there, but we'll just let that go for now. Do you have anything that you want to plug or say or promote?
I can't hear anything.
That's her next book she's doing. I can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything at all. So,
do you want to plug anything, Brian?
No, I just started reading King Kong Theory. I'd highly recommend it. As I'm in lockstep with everybody else. So yeah, check that out. It's really short, and like Emma was saying a few episodes ago, it's a great way of sneaking some feminist theory without you even knowing you're reading it.
Yeah.
So she hides the peas in the mashed potatoes really well in a literary.
Yeah. I actually feel different than that in the sense that I think that it's very obvious.
Well, yeah, but I mean it's fun
in the right way, in the way that it's like not preachy. It's entertaining. It's entertaining. Yeah. But entertaining and like true. It's more authentic to me. This is gonna be one of my terms.
Yeah, it's still like brass knuckles punch to the gut, which is kind of what I really like about her writing as well. It's punchy and edgy, but it has a heart to it still too. So
this podcast has gone all over the place and all over. And I will end with this. Brian, do you like Adam Curtis's documentaries?
I'm not familiar with him.
Oh shit! Seriously, he is so down the middle of your plate. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
So, the newest one is from earlier this year, from like February. It's called "Can't Get You Out of My Head." And Adam Curtis is a BBC sort of documentarian whose style is very like BBC-esque, but it's also like a BBC documentarian meets that stoner who lived in your dorm room or your dorm suite, who like knew everything about history and was able to be like, hold on, do you know about how this connects with this?
Okay.
But like dealing with 20th century things and the relationship of the individual to society and the individual to systems. And that's what it relates. And the reason I bring it up is that I think that Patrice, and I think that to a lesser extent Sophie, but definitely Aïcha, relate to this idea of the individual versus like the system. And that Dupont's feminism and like the strong part of King Kong theory, where you say like she works in the peas among the mashed potatoes, that part of it is that she, in a sense, like hits that meaning, hits the right, that there is something to the system. The system is fucked, and we can get a sense of the system, even if you don't have to be like they, but like to describe the systems of power and how they react within other parts of society is really interesting. And this new 6-part documentary, it's 6 movies, it's 6 hour-and-a-half-long movies, are really wonderful. I think you would really like them.
Let's pin that topic because I think it's perfect for next week, since we had Patrice and his Marxist, like wannabe Marxist lifestyle, and then our character that we're not going to talk about yet, and communism pops up. So we have these big isms, which she's kind of playing with. That could be really fun to talk about those systems. And
absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
And next week, Frank Wynn will be here to talk about the translation.
Perfect.
For the first of 3 appearances.
Excellent.
So yeah, so get your yummy mummies ready, boys and girls.
Gross.